culture killed Concord. We're going to watch it right now and react to it. Let's get into it.
Culture killed Concord. It's that simple. When you fail this spectacularly out of the gate with issues that are easy to validate with customers, you know, the people that pay you so that you can make games, well, you have a culture problem. Either
she was an executive producer at Microsoft. I'm just so glad every time I watch one of her videos. Her channel is so great. And by the way, her editing is a little bit better on this one. Her headspace is better. Like if you go back and watch the last one, it's clear she's invested in some audio equipment and such. Why nobody has hired her? Like, I feel like she's the reality check that these big companies need. Like she had the right take with Baldur's Gate. She has the right take with Concord. And like, that was my big reaction. If you go watch the next gen console watch, I'm like, where was the focus testing? Like, did you not listen to it?
Firewalk Studios had the information they needed and they didn't bother to fix the issues in the game, or they never asked. Either one of these situations is a problem.
Yep. So either you knew the problems and you didn't do anything about it, or you didn't ask if there were any problems and you just assumed you knew everything. Both are bad things. Like the initial launch trailer was panned. Everybody was like, I don't like these characters. Like, it seems like Guardians of the Galaxy knockoff. What is this? Like, there was no positive reaction to that initial trailer. It's not letting me do the transition here.
Every game has many unknowns when you start out. That's why game development is so difficult, because it's iterative. You have to make the game while paying attention to what is going on around you, because gaming evolves. What players like changes. This means you need a studio culture that has a healthy feedback loop. Clearly, that didn't happen with Concord.
Yeah. Studio culture where you just, like, any company you work at, if you don't want to listen to somebody who is just saying, hey, I think we have an issue with the storytelling in our game. We have an issue with the character designs. Like, they don't seem particularly interesting. We should probably look on zhuzhing them up, like making them extra cool or something like that. This feels a little derivative of Guardians of the Galaxy. If you don't want to hear any of that, or there's not a feeling that you can say what you feel truthfully at a company, you're going to run into an issue where you're unable to address the issues at the company. Right. And I think that's what she's getting at. It's very frustrating.
Let me explain. First, if you haven't heard.
And like, I'm not talking about just being like a jerk in a company meeting, but if you can't say, come on guys, like this is very Guardians of the Galaxy. They're like, nah, we don't want to hear it. It's like, okay, well, let's do a focus test and let's see how people react. And then they either don't listen to it or whatever.
Concord shut down after 12 days. It had less than 1,000 concurrent players and less than 25,000 units were sold. Cost-wise, I've seen estimates that said $250 million plus was spent. Also,
I think that's not correct. Like, I know she was an EP at Microsoft. I don't think that number's correct. I've seen that number also. And there's no world where 250 million makes any sense, right? Like it had to be closer, like maybe 200, 250. It's a little high.
They were in development for over 6 years. And this is the first issue we'll talk about. That is a long time to make a game. And the landscape of gaming evolves.
Yeah. This is like the first Overwatch short, by the way,
Let's
like ever made.
take a look at what was going on when Concord started. Overwatch had just shipped, and it was a spectacular success.
Look at the flow of the animation and the smoothness in which those characters move in these shorts. And like, we don't really know anything. I remember my initial reaction to watching this, actually. I was sort of like, okay, like I like the animation. The animation looks cool, but I don't really know who these characters are. And then the May short came out. And I was like, oh, they're able to like sort of touch on feelings of, you know, being young or looking up to somebody or anything like that. And yeah, it's really interesting to hear something like Laura discuss these topics.
Being inspired by the success of Overwatch is not a surprise. Everybody would want to make an Overwatch. The problem is that they took several years to make the game and the market changed. They needed to adjust. Unfortunately, this is not a new story.
SOE.
This happened to Sigil Games when they were working on a game called Vanguard. Vanguard was a massive...
I've never heard of Vanguard. Has anybody heard of Vanguard? I've never heard of Vanguard ever before. Anyway, it was like EverQuest. I'm actually reading, and I have to finish it. I've gotten a little crazy over the last few weeks, but I'm reading this book, Play Nice, Jason Schreier's book. I wasn't paid to read this or talk about it or anything like that, by the way. He just sent it over. He did provide the book. This is a very good book. It is about the history of Blizzard, and they talk about how when EverQuest 2 was being developed, they were making World of Warcraft. I learned so much about Blizzard from this book. That's why I love it so much. And it's sort of written in the style of, like, I used to read books about hackers like Kevin Mitnick and stuff like that. And it's sort of written in that style. And I really do appreciate that. He's taking us through sort of a history lesson of the company. Well, anyway, before World of Warcraft came out, there was like Final Fantasy 11 was sort of around that time. This Vanguard game was around that time. And World of Warcraft came out and it was just more accessible and better. So, yeah.
Massively multiplayer game started in 2002. The company was founded by Brad McQuaid, who is credited with making EverQuest, one of the most successful games at the time. I joined Vanguard as the Microsoft executive producer at the same time I started on Gears of War.
So, yeah, she worked on this in Gears of War. I'm not going to lie. Vanguard looks cool, though. Like, visually, it looks interesting.
I remember when EverQuest launched because everyone at Microsoft stopped doing their jobs and started playing the game. So I was...
the funny thing is, in Jason's book, apparently the same thing happened at Blizzard. There were so many people playing EverQuest that, like, it would bring productivity to an absolute halt, and they would just be playing this game all the time. But what did it result in? It resulted in World of Warcraft.
I wasn't surprised when Microsoft signed the deal to make Vanguard. They wanted the next EverQuest. We were so excited about this game. The only problem was that the market changed rapidly when Blizzard shipped World of Warcraft in 2004. WoW massively expanded the market, bringing in more casual players. Suddenly, you didn't have to camp a spawn for 20 hours like in EverQuest. You could leave your computer. You could even use the bathroom. It was awesome. It was a whole new world, a world gamers liked. Unfortunately, the Sigil team didn't want to hear that feedback. They didn't accept that the market had moved, and they were designing Vanguard to be more like the original EverQuest. In fact, they refused to play the game, which
I think she's talking about World of Warcraft. This part in the video where she's like, they refused to play the game. Every time I hear that about a studio, if I hear that about the studio, I would bet money that the game is going to have major issues that could have been addressed had they looked at the competition market. When Anthem was being developed, there was like a little bit of a rule within BioWare that you weren't supposed to talk about Destiny. That is so stupid. Why in the world would you not play the competition, see what they're doing well, and implement those good features into your product? Oh man, I really like XYZ. We should make sure we have something comparable in our game. Like, you're absolutely crazy. It's crazy.
Found very confusing. For context, most game developers play every game that directly competes with theirs. They play to learn and for inspiration. They play to make sure that when they ship, that it's something players want, that it's something they'll pay for. You can't afford to make a massively expensive game and then hope that you're going to attract an audience. You need to know that there's an audience for your game.
And absolutely, it's like something has happened with the video game industry, and the only word I can think to describe it is hubris. I think there is an arrogance or hubris in the games industry where they think that they're going to, out of thin air, without looking at anything else in the industry, going to be able to make something better. It's just like, why the frick would you do that? Why in the world would you do that? Why wouldn't you look at the competition? Why wouldn't you look at the games that people are excited about and say, oh, maybe we could learn a thing or two from that? No, yeah, no, you're the creative vision that's going to make the next World of Warcraft. You know what the World of Warcraft team did? They played the crap out of EverQuest and said, we want to make our EverQuest. They got rid of they wrote a list of all the shit they didn't like in EverQuest. They wrote a list of all the shit that they did like in EverQuest. And then they were like, let's make our better version of that. And they made World of Warcraft. Like, oh, what's the magic sauce that Blizzard came up with to make World of Warcraft? We just can't figure it out. They played video games and they talked about and why they liked them and what they didn't like and how they could improve it. Like this boneheadedness of, oh, we're going to come up with it out of thin air and we're not going to talk about that other game or use it for market analysis.
You have to build it with the players in mind from the start. When we play tested Vanguard, we were finding players didn't like it. It was too hard. There was too much grinding. Unfortunately, Sigil didn't want to hear it. Some of the team were actively hostile when we tried to discuss it. When you have people giving feedback and you're openly hostile to that feedback, a lot of people, most people, will just shut down. They'll just stop telling you what's wrong. Or
yeah. Hey, I think that this game, like if you're talking about Concord, hey, I think this is a little bit Guardians of the Galaxy knockoff and you're called names or ridiculed or just basically called stupid or anything sort of negative. Okay, go ahead, launch your game. I'll enjoy the 2 more weeks of paychecks that I'm going to get. Like, it makes me very frustrated. The Concord situation is the most frustrating because I see a situation that was at least partially preventable, right? I don't think it needed to get 12 days in before it was axed. And even when you're talking about something like World of Warcraft, it wasn't like an original idea. Somebody had done the MMO already. They just did the best MMO, which hadn't been done yet.
what they think should change, because they don't need the stress or they don't want to lose their jobs. And this creates a broken feedback loop.
Yep.
So it's not surprising that
They don't want the stress. They don't want to lose their jobs. So you know what they do? They don't say the things that they want to say. That's problematic, isn't it? Isn't that kind of bad? Doesn't that just kind of create an echo chamber of positivity?
the market changed out from under the team that was making Concord. The question is, why didn't they adjust? Did they not see it? Or did they playtest, see the issues, and not make changes? Or maybe they had a hostile work environment where people stopped giving feedback.
I mean, that would be worse. Well, she's referencing the Park Place here. I don't know about how true that was or not, but there are rumors about the internal culture of the company.
I saw this report recently claiming that there were big problems within the Firewalk Studios. I have no idea if this is true, but if it is, it's not surprising that the feedback loop for making the game better was broken. Here's what happens when you have a broken culture and no creative dialogue and no feedback loop. All of your best people leave.
Yeah. And that's the real point that she's getting at. She's like, look, there's this rumor going around that there was problems internally at the company. And the reason that's problematic is because your best people will leave. They will quit. They will not stay at the company. Right? Oh, you're going to put me down because I told, like, who's going to be nicer? The person you've worked with for however long, 6 years, or random people on the internet? Who do you think's going to give you the feedback nicely? The person you like put down, or maybe, just maybe, that colleague that you've worked with for like 6 years. Who's going to be better? Chat, what do you think? Let's take a vote. I'm going to bet on the guy you've worked with for 6 years, or gal. The person you work with, because they're in the trenches with you. They want, well, hopefully they want the best for, you know, the business that they're working at. And they certainly want more than 1,000 concurrents on Steam when the game launches. Like, you have to have feedback pass for people, and you have to allow differing opinions. And there's the creator, the guy who made Fallout. He does this great series, Tim Kaine, I think is his name. And he talks about like having passionate debates in an office, and then people come in, they're like, oh, hey, can you keep it down? You're kind of freaking out the employees. It's like, no, we're creating something cool. Like, we're passionate about the thing. And I've had that once in my career. And that person went on to be like one of my best friends. His name's Mike, and he did a stream with me a few times on my birthday. But those sort of things are really, really special when you have that positive friction, for lack of a better term, where you're butting heads because you both want the thing to be awesome, right? That can be really, really good and positive energy. Blizzard had it to a point, and then I believe there's like, I'm reading through the book right now and eventually it goes too far, but like, yeah.
All the best engineers, the best designers, the best artists, they know that they can find another job, even in this tough job market, because they're provably good. They have a reputation. They don't want to waste their time. Then you have your next group, the people that are good but aren't confident or don't want to look for a job. That group simply shuts down. They stop giving feedback. They stop dealing with the people that are making the environment toxic. They know they won't get fired for their work, so they make sure they stay out of the controversy. And now you just have everyone else. You have inexperienced people or people who don't feel afraid expressing their opinions. And those vocal people will start driving the design and the look of the game. And that isn't what you want.
Well, I do think that she highlights just a natural hierarchy in any business. So, I mean, that's sort of natural, but you cannot be shutting down. Like if you shut down somebody enough times, you know what they're going to start doing? They're going to stop fighting you. Sure, I'll just make whatever thing that I don't like the look of because I've been told to, you know, or like I don't want to fight you anymore. I'll just do whatever you want. Okay, I'll make the thing. And like, is that what you want for your business? You want talented people that just give up?
Want everyone giving feedback and making the game better.
Yes.
We will likely never know exactly what was going on at the studio, but to me it's clear they didn't build a culture of feedback because they didn't make a game the gamers want. Let's take a look at one of the other problems. Characters. Creating inspirational characters that people want to play.
Yeah.
This is really critical to the game. I know because we had this exact problem on Gotham City Imposters.
Let's get that blindfold off you. Welcome to Bat's HQ in this shit.
I think,
As you know, we are dedicated to honoring Batman's nobility through our words and deeds.
For context, Gotham was a first-person shooter that shipped in early 2012.
I remember this game very well.
Made by the team at Monolith that shipped classics like No One Lives Forever and Fear.
It was popular.
The idea was based off of this clip from the Batman movie.
Don't let me fight.
Okay, yeah, we're going to skip this part, but it's the hockey mask part from the Batman flick.
When you look at these wannabe Batman clones, they are average people. They aren't inspiring like Batman, and that's the point. They're average people cosplaying Batman on the weekend. And it's funny. And this team leaned in to that humor. At that time, we were making the game for young men that like playing first-person shooters. Generally, the age range for this group was around 14 to 24.
I find it interesting that she identifies like our target demographic was young men. I have to wonder, like, what are the demos of video games right now? I'm really curious, sort of like, does it skew male still mostly? Like, there's no denying that a lot of women play games, but like when you're developing a product, is it like 50-50 now? Because she's talking about like 10 years ago, at least 10 years ago. And we know there's more women playing games. Anyway, just an interesting thought.
Gotham team loved first-person shooters, and they were good at making them. At the same time, they were older. This team had been together for many years, so they knew that they needed to validate their assumptions with real people that would be paying for the game.
Yes.
This is how we found out that we had a problem with our characters. The people that were going to pay for the game didn't feel the characters were inspiring enough.
Yeah.
It turns out that a group of adult game developers who are confident in who they are find it funny to play a fat slob or a skinny guy with a shotgun. Younger players, not so much. And if you think about it, you can see why. I went through awkward stages. There were many times in my life where the last person I would have wanted to play was me in a video.
Yeah. Okay. She is absolutely on fire right now. I don't understand why it seems like everybody has forgotten that video games are a fantasy where you want to play a character that is better than you. At least I do, right? Like it's about fantasy. It's about fantasizing about improving in some way. Like in RPGs, you want to be the cool leader. Like whether you were femship or maleship, you want to be seen as that cool leader who has all the traits that you want, or you're playing the fantasy of playing somebody totally evil that you can't do in real life, or like you would aspire to be more like, or like Ghost of Tsushima, right? You like, you want to be that samurai. And it's really interesting to hear her say this, like, yeah, Gotham City Imposters didn't hit for us because we made a bunch of like out of shape characters or characters that weren't cool. And I come back to the example of Roadhog. When you look at Roadhog is a character that you could want to be like he's not in great shape. He's overweight, but he's just, he has that cool factor. He's a cool bigger guy, or I don't know, he's a hog, or I don't know what he is in Overwatch. But point is, his design's really interesting, right? And I think that was definitely something that likely held back Gotham City Imposters, as we're learning, and also held back Concord.
Video game. At first, it was very difficult for some of the team to hear this feedback. Part of that was because the team was very small, so making a new character was going to be tough.
Yeah.
Also, it's never easy for an artist or creator to hear that there is a problem with their work. It's one of the hardest conversations you can have with a creator. But
yeah, honestly, like, was it hard for me to hear everybody be mad about content that I've made? Like, I've made content in the past that made the whole world mad, basically, or they said that I wasn't doing it right. Yes, it was very hard on me. I'll be totally honest with you, especially when you put like tons of work into something and then it falls on its face. That's hard to hear. You know what I do with that? I improve the next one. I make sure I ask the right questions for the next interview. I make sure I do better prep next time. I effed whatever up, and you try to be better every time you make a mistake. You learn from it and you improve. That is all we can do. I am not a perfect person. I don't talk perfectly. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I know I have these limitations because I am a human being. All I can do is strive to make a better piece of content with every piece of content that I make. And I get it wrong sometimes. That's okay to admit. And that's just from my perspective. You have to have that ability as a creative anything if you hope to improve, right? At least that's my take on it.
Ultimately, you have to find a way to have this conversation.
Yes.
Or you end up with a failed game. You just can't make games without considering who will buy them. You have to appeal to the people that are going to play and love your game. And that brings us to the next problem, the $40 price point.
Oh, yeah.
If you ship something free, you can't change the price later and charge more. It doesn't work. People anchor on that free and they never go back. So maybe that's what Sony was thinking. We had a similar issue with Gotham City Imposters. We didn't feel that Gotham City had enough content to charge $60, so we went out and we asked our target market what they would pay. What we found was that there were basically two price points, free and everything else. From a community standpoint, we felt it would be better to ship Gotham as a free-to-play game because we felt more people would try the game and we'd have more players. As you saw with Concord, if you are a multiplayer-only game and nobody is playing, it dies quickly. Of course, these were early days of free-to-play gaming on consoles and PC. Many gamers didn't like the free-to-play model. I was one of them. I still prefer putting down money, getting a disc, and playing the game forever. That is my preferred purchase. But we weren't making the game for me. We were making the game for our target audience.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, Xbox didn't have a free-to-play game at this point.
Okay.
In fact, they had just started experimenting with a game called Happy Wars, which...
Here's the crazy thing about everything that she's saying. Like, yeah, it wasn't around at that time. I remember Gotham City Imposters, and I remember it being positively received when it launched. So even though it was a failure, quote unquote, it did find an audience somewhere.
Shipped in October of 2012. So we were stuck, and that's how we ended up in this in-between stage, which some people didn't like. I thought this review from the Cynical Brit really captured it, and he was very fair with his feedback.
Extra points for that. The debate, I suppose, with a title like this is whether or not it should be a pay-to-play or free-to-play game. And it's weird. The market's in
It looks
this weird
decent.
state at the moment where they'll willingly accept Call of Duty and its progression system as a $60 title on a yearly basis. But if you have a similar progression system in anything below $60, people say it should be free. What? I was reading the RPS.
Eventually, Gotham was a free-to-play game.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it never recovered. It never got the interest it needed to continue. The leadership that made that game left the company, and WB Games abandoned the title in order to focus on their new franchise, Shadow of Mordor.
I mean, Shadow of Mordor, they developed the new technology. I mean, yeah, eventually you got to let the non-winners go, right? But it is interesting to hear the lessons she learned. And my hope would be that the rest of the industry learns from her mistakes. Or her studio's mistakes.
Any game is really hard. So I give Firewalk Studios a lot of credit for shipping it all. They should be proud of having gotten it out the door.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, I've heard a lot of hate for Concord. I've given it a lot of hate. There were cool things in the game, right? There's stuff that they could hang their hat on and be proud of. Like, I think the animation was good, even though the character models weren't that interesting. Like, the flaws were like storytelling, character design, overall gameplay structure, right? But there are facets within all of that that you can take positivity away from, I do think. And the fact that they ever got it out the door is impressive, even after it was 6 years. I just hope this is a big learning lesson for them. And do focus testing for the love of everything. Do focus testing.
Personally am not happy to see them fail. I find the situation sad because from my perspective, it could have been different. I felt the same way about Vanguard when it failed. Sigil and I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, and I had hoped that when they moved back to Sony, a culture they were familiar with, they would fix the game and ship something wonderful. But
yeah, you know, she said it's sad. It's sad that this game came out and, you know, flopped on its face. I think a big reason why I have issue with Concord is because there's a wealth of talent at that company. They made Destiny. There is something to the bones of the game, but like, it didn't come together in a way that could have been impactful, or it just didn't work. It did not work. What they released didn't work, but it could have, if they had been if they had been willing to listen and adjust, right? I think that is the problem. And I've said, Alex, just say real quick for Concord, I've said publicly that I did not agree with that review. Travis is a good friend of mine. I don't think it was a 7, period.
sadly, that didn't happen. Much about the games industry has changed over the years, but making successful games still requires building a team and a culture where feedback is heard and acted upon.
Yeah.
Every problem on a game is known by someone on the team or the customer.
Yeah. I mean, she's right. You think nobody at the company knew that? Like, I've heard from developers who are like, yeah, we read your review. We've heard it all internally before. Like either the customer's going to know, like they knew loud and clear after that first trailer.
And if you can surface those issues and act upon them, then you're going to make a better game.
Yes.
It's really that simple. Culture matters.
Yeah, she's right. I mean, that's the whole video. Laura Fryer is, it's just really wonderful that she makes these videos. She doesn't put them out that often. I'm going to link to it in chat really quick. But long story short, culture will lead to not great video games at the end of the day. And I do think it is something that I hope more studios look at. Wow, that video did really well for her. It did 136,000 views. That's probably one of her biggest videos. She just released it like the other day. Her channel's she doesn't have a ton of subs, but the Concord one really got picked up by the algo. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you like my content, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. I really do appreciate you watching so much. Thank you so much to all of the members. The memberships just keep growing. It's been absolutely crazy. If you like the content that I produce, please consider becoming a member. It just supports the channel and it helps it grow. Click that join button right down there. I really do appreciate you. If you want to see my take about why the PlayStation 5 Pro reveal failed, it is right here. I do appreciate everybody for watching. I'm going to get out of here. I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.